Hello and welcome to Opening Bars. What a Fool Believes is a song co-written by Kenny Loggins and Michael McDonald in 1978. In fact, Kenny released his own version of this song on his album Night Watch, and you really should have a listen. It's very recognizable, of course, but a wholly different vibe. There's a link in the description. But it's the version on the Doobie Brothers Minute by Minute album that became a Grammy #1 hit. It's interesting to read of Kenny Loggins' thoughts after he heard the McDonald recording. He says, "I thought it was amazing. Michael's feel, vocal harmonies, and stride keyboard made the song drop dead perfect. I remember wishing that I could have re-recorded mine." It's noteworthy, too, to read accounts of the torturous recording process for this song. Nothing about it ever felt right. McDonald recalls, "We cut so many versions of it. It was just a funny song to learn to play. We had gone through God knows how many rolls of tapes trying to get that song. We just didn't feel like we were capturing the groove." It was producer Ted Templeton who kept insisting that the song was worth completing, and in fact contributed to the drum tracks. Ted himself is quoted as saying, "I just wanted a sort of floppy feel, and if you listen to it, it's really a kind of floppy record. It flops around. The drums aren't perfect. Nothing's perfect on it." I think this is a fascinating comment in an era, nowadays, where recordings are literally pro-tooled into rhythmic and melodic perfection. Let's get started with a harmonic analysis. Here are 2 score examples I found online that I have re-input into MuseScore. The first example here, I believe, doesn't do the performance justice, as it inaccurately notates 4-note chords throughout, a thickened texture that just isn't represented in the McDonald recording. I don't mind the chord labels, for I am a big fan of leaning towards using slash chords in pop music as an aid in rendering the performance, but I generally avoid notating extended chords in this genre if possible, instead reserving 9, 11, and 13 labels for jazz charts, where the performer has increased options for choosing their own voicings. Notice in measure 1, as written, the G-flat major 7 over A-flat is not quite right, for it doesn't account for the A-flat in the right hand. That A-flat would be the 9th. Similarly in measure 3, here the G-flat chord over A-flat in the bass doesn't account for the A-flat in the right hand. In the same bar, the E-flat minor 9 is almost correct here. Again, the A-flat would be an 11th, and also the topmost F doesn't actually appear in the recording. It's really only an E-flat minor 7 chord. It's fascinating to me that we think we actually hear this F, but we are really just making it up in our heads. We assume that the pattern repeats and continues throughout, and, including the falsely attributed E-flat in the A-dim 7 chord, is a musical illusion. Go ahead and listen to the recording. You may actually be surprised by this. The transcription in this second example is more accurate, although I still don't believe I hear full 4-note chords in measures 1 or 3. What does interest me, though, are 2 particular symbols, the A-flat 13 sus and the A-flat 9 sus. So here it is. If the A-flat is the root, then the D-flat is the suspended 4th, that would resolve to the C, which it does. There's no 5th degree. The G-flat would be the 7th, and the B-flat the 9th. This is often marked as a 9 sus 4 or even an 11 chord. However, I think that's a tad erroneous and misleading. I do always write this as a slash chord, for then it's completely unambiguous to the pianist of what to play. And because of the prevalence of this chord in pop, soul, funk, and gospel music, I've created my own label, 4-dom, meaning a sonority that feels primarily 4 sitting atop the dominant 5 in the bass. Now, this is very advanced harmony with a lot of moving parts, so I think we should reduce this to its essential elements to get an unencumbered look. Here is my reduction. I feel that the chord symbols adequately serve their functions here, to represent the harmony and to present accurate instructions to the performer. The G-flat 5-7 perfectly describes the G-flat, D-flat, and F in the right hand, and then adds that sus2 at beat 2. You can clearly see that the whole bar is a 4 sonority despite what the bass is doing. When identifying the chord in a more traditional sense, I'd prefer using 4 with the A-flat in the bass being labeled as a non-chord tone, or for me, use my custom 4-dom designation. I think it's also really interesting that the passing tones on the offbeats form full 5-7 chords, but I do feel that the chords on the primary beats to be more orally significant. Two other moments I'd like to pay some attention to are beat 4 in measure 3 and the final 2 chords. Here, this A-dim 7 chord functions, as per a Wikipedia definition, as a secondary leading tone diminished chord, or secondary diminished seventh. That is, a secondary chord that is the leading tone triad or seventh chord of the tonicized chord, rather than its dominant. In contrast to secondary dominant chords, these chords resolve up a half step. This particular chord then leads to the B-flat minor 7-6. Those are really beautiful colors. Finding a label for the final chord is much more problematic. The bass moves chromatically from the B-flat through the A natural, which I've chosen to notate as a double flat here to highlight its direction, on its way back to the A-flat. The right hand is almost a kind of 4 over that 5 A natural, as we have seen previously, but the fifth is flattened and then passes through as raised on its way back to the F. The third, too, moves chromatically from the B natural to the C natural. That one's really hard to hear, but it's surely there in the recording. So I've chosen to label this an A9 flat 5 in brackets. And the flat 5 is in brackets because that note actually isn't there, but an E natural wouldn't make any sense either. And the following chord is an A minor 7 flat 5. One might argue that the E flat and C are passing tones, but it's hard to distinguish which chord matters most. The first as an anticipatory chord and the next the arrival, or beat 3 being the chord of sonic importance and the latter just passing. I'm not sure. I think I'll just label both because they're both just way too cool. Let's look at a full transcription now. Starting with the right hand, the rhythm in measures 1 and 3 are identical, 2 quarter notes and 4 eighths. The following measures are an eighth rest, eighth note, and 3 quarter notes. There's a slight variation in measure 4. The cleverness here is that change to an anticipatory chord on the and of beat 4 at the end of the measure, and the offbeat syncopation of the next. It's really easy to rush this passage, not giving the quarter notes the time they deserve, and possibly over-anticipating the syncopations. Let's try this with a metronome. Now try it without a metronome. Go back and retry this with and without the metronome. See how steady you can be. The left hand, too, is very funky. For now, play the full note lengths and be rock steady. Let's play that too, with a metronome. Okay, now it's time to put the two hands together. Let's go. Now that you know the notes, you can concentrate on advancing specific piano techniques. If you listen carefully to the Doobie Brothers' performance, you will hear very specific articulation. You'll notice that a lot of online sheet music has this notated as a staccato on some of the quarter notes, that is, a dot placed over the note. Wikipedia defines the staccato as a note of shortened duration separated from the note that may follow by silence. The actual translation of this musical term from the Italian might be more properly described as detached. So you'd like to musically separate and make distinct the note or whole chord. This, of course, is differentiated from legato, which would mean to connect the notes in a smooth, continuous line. Let's create an exercise here. Let's play an A-flat major scale, two hands, 2 octaves, up and down, legato first, and then staccato in tempo. Now let's try the same scale, slurring 2 notes and making the next 2 staccato. Again 2 octaves, but this time starting at the top. Now let's try the right hand legato and the left hand staccato. Let's reverse the articulations in the hands now. You can alter the patterns by trying different scales, modes, extending the number of octaves, changing direction, experimenting with dynamics and tempi. As you can see, you can make a whole variety of interesting exercises to strengthen skills, but also make your technical practice more relevant and less monotonous and less boring. Now we should try and put that all together. Clearly, you're not going to use the damper pedal here, and we can use staccato on the quarter notes, but in the right hand only. I wouldn't apply that to the left hand. I would just concentrate on playing the rests. The eighth notes in both the right hand and left hand seem to be connected. I'd even say to play them legato. In fact, our 2 hands will be articulating quite differently. Now that's worth practicing. I would experiment with no articulations first, and then try to incorporate them the next time through. Let's do that now, playing them both ways, one right after the other. Here we go. Listen, or better yet, record your own efforts and hear how your articulated execution can result in a heightened musical rendering. I hope you enjoyed your lesson today. Remember, don't just play notes, make music. Until next time, thanks for listening.